Hello, and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm your host, Patty Nuovo, and we have an exciting program today. Our guest is David Russell. David is a licensed acupuncturist, and he is going to be giving us a little bit of the history and background of acupuncture.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Can you give us a little bit of a background or a history? Where does acupuncture come from?
Well, acupuncture originated in China, and it started actually 5,000 years ago, where they would use stone needles, which were actually more like arrowheads, and they would push on specific points. There were stone needles, jade needles. Jade needles were more sharp needles. Sometimes I've read that sometimes they use bamboo shards that they would make real sharp and use. And then eventually with the smelting of metals, they would use silver needles, bronze, and silver and gold, actually, gold needles. So that maybe about 2,500, 3,000 years ago, they started using acupuncture. And about 500 BC, 2,500 years ago, a classic of internal medicine, the most famous book in Chinese medicine. I mean, today, 2,500 years later, they still use this text for ways to diagnose and prescribe point prescriptions and herbs and everything, you know. So it's pretty amazing, and people specialize in translating these texts, and there's lots of disputes on the proper, terminology used. But it's funny because that book opens saying that it's a conversation between the Yellow Emperor and Qi Bo, who is the chief physician of the Yellow Emperor. And the Yellow Emperor starts out saying, oh, back before us, they say that people used to live so much longer than they do now. And this is 500 BC, Why did people live so much longer before us? And the physician says, oh, well, back then people would live more in harmony with nature. They lived with the seasons. They rose with the sunrise and slept when the sun set. And nowadays people drink too much alcohol and they sleep irregularly and they eat horribly, So we say that about today and maybe 100 years ago, and they were saying it 500 BC.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, with regards to that, is acupuncture considered a modality or a branch? Because I know it's traditional Chinese medicine. So
Right.
Can you explain why that specific technique came about?
Well, that's a good point, because acupuncture really is just one of the 5 traditional branches of Chinese medicine. So there's acupuncture, massage, nutrition, there's herbology, which is a huge branch, and then there's exercises, traditional exercises like you hear of Tai Chi and Qigong. These things have been used by the doctor to teach people how to heal themselves, for all these years. So acupuncture really is just one branch of the medicine.
So that when you learn acupuncture, when you went to school, you learned the other 5 all 5 at the same time?
Right. The school I went to actually was 5 Branches Institute. So they specialize, all the schools really do. Some schools are maybe more acupuncture heavy or herb heavy, but in the end you learn, it's a way of life, so you have to learn how to balance all of those modalities. Because some patients don't necessarily even need acupuncture. They need more herbs for certain things, or they don't need herbs, they need acupuncture. So, yeah.
That's interesting. Now, what made you, from what I understand, you're a certified massage therapist, and then you continued on and got involved with acupuncture. Where was your interest in that?
I became interested in it first year of college in 1990. I was interested in it, and I actually just wanted to drop out of college and go. I came to Santa Cruz. I was in Massachusetts. I came to Santa Cruz and sat in on a class, but then I realized, this is a heavy commitment. It's 4 years, and actually I needed a prerequisites to go anyway. So I became a massage therapist because I figured, okay, this is less schooling. I'm ready to do this, and I figured I could learn acupressure and start incorporating that as a line of work that I liked. And so I did massage for years and years. 1996, I was in Portland, and I was taking a break from massage, and I was actually working for U.S. Bank. and it was a really stressful job, and I was commuting on a bus to work to downtown Portland, and I was pretty miserable. And I started getting these horrible digestive problems. Every time I would eat food, I thought I was going to throw up, and I was just wasting away and really sick. So I went to my doctor, a regular MD at the time, and they ran all the tests. Everything was normal. They gave me some drugs, and nothing did anything. So I was pretty frustrated, and I still had to work and survive, and so I had to do something. So I don't know why I didn't think of it sooner, but I went to an acupuncturist, and the first needle she put in, it was right above my belly button, and she put this needle in my stomach, and all of the nausea just kind of wisped away. It was pretty miraculous for, it doesn't always happen that way, but for me it was just like a balloon was just released, and I just felt better. And then, of course, after a few treatments, and then I was put on herbs, and after a couple months I was all better. And so that's kind of the spark when I was like, oh wow, I have to learn how to do this.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned needles. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Because the only needles I know is from either the dentist or the doctor.
Right, big hypodermic needles.
Yeah. So can you just explain about needles?
You can fit about 25 acupuncture needles in a hypodermic needle. And I have, this is a needle right here. It's hair thin, and you can bend it, and it's extremely thin. And they're sterilized needles. They come in a bubble pack, and there's normally 5 or 10 needles. One needle is, once it's used, it's gone. You'd never reuse needles. They used to, back in the day, heat them up to sterilize them again, but now it's against the law to do that, so one use. And there's different size needles. Traditionally in China they tend to use thicker needles, and in Japanese acupuncture they tend to use thinner needles. So there's lots of different styles of acupuncture out there. There's lots of kinds. There's traditional Chinese medicine, there's Japanese acupuncture, and in that there's a few different types. There is auricular acupuncture, where they focus on just the ear, because the ear is a microcosm of the entire body, kind of like reflexology with the foot. So there's
different needles.
There's special needles that you use for the ear that are much smaller and thinner. So it's a lot of good research is coming out with ear acupuncture too. There's something called the NADA protocol, and it's used for drug addiction and alcohol addiction. And mostly what they do is 5 points in the ear. So, and you'll sit in a big room, and you'll get all your needles, and you have to go quite often because it helps stimulate endorphins and balance out neurotransmitters and take the sensation that you need to fix. So it works great for those kind of things. So yeah, there are different types of needles throughout.
It's so amazing that you're blending Western with Eastern, coming from China, and how they would have known those things and still do today.
Right. Today, I actually studied in China too for a couple months, and I studied in Hangzhou, which my teacher said, oh, we're going to go to this beautiful resort town of Hangzhou. There's a nice lake there. And we get there, and it's just as big as San Francisco. It's this huge city. There's a beautiful lake in the middle, but it's this hustling, bustling city. So I was able to experience firsthand working and studying in the hospital there.